Today. It's kind of a smorgasbord, if you will, of startup topics. We're going to talk a little bit about prototyping. We're going to talk about an upcoming event. We're going to talk about traction. We're going to talk about closing deals and startups. So lots of stuff going on. For those of you who are just joining us here today, my name is JDM, aka Josh David Miller, aka the Shredder of Business Models. And this is my weekly office hours where we talk about all things startup, from idea all the way to product market fit. And you can kind of ask me anything you want. There's a link in the description. If you have a question you want to ask in advance, you can submit one. You can record a video even if you want to, and I'll play it here, or you can just type in a nice question there. So hit that up if you want to learn more about that. But let's kind of dive in. Let's kind of dive in here. So I'm actually curious from you guys, and I'll ask this again a little bit later. What's the most recent thing that you've learned from a customer? Maybe it's one of your customers or somebody you serve, if you don't have customers directly, but tell me something you learned. I'm really curious. All right, so let's dive in. So before I get to the first question, I'm going to pose a little question to you, which is, are you interested in prototyping? So I'm a huge fan of rapid prototyping. And I don't mean MVPs. I don't mean a small version of the big thing that you're trying to build. I'm talking about rapidly getting something up in less than a day, maybe even an hour, putting it in front of customers, getting real feedback, and then using that to build a stronger model. Fun fact. Startups have a failure rate of about 95%. 95% of all startups just fail, right? They just don't exist 2 years later. But the startups that prototype do far better. How much better, you ask? Well, the startup that does just 10 prototypes, their failure rate drops by almost half. That's insane. And the startups that prototype 50 times, their failure rate drops to less than 20%, from 95% down to 20%, just by doing those rapid iterations of prototypes. Why? Because you're getting crazy feedback right from the customers that you need to serve on really important points. So there's so much more that I have to say about that. So I actually have a resource that I'm launching soon. It's going to be a free resource all about prototyping, help with prototyping. And if you're interested in that, there is a link in the description you can use. Just throw down your email address and I'll send you a link when that launches. So I'll have news on that soon, but I'm really excited. Lots of fun prototype stuff coming up. Okay, enough about that. First question here. This came up from a few different startups today, this week, which was about closing deals. And so I wanted to talk about it for a bit. So there's two different ways I want to do this, but the basic question is like, okay, we have this thing out there, the customers that we serve like it, but we're having trouble like closing new business. And the question is usually something like, how do I get in front of more customers? So there's two different ways I want to answer that. And both of them are a little bit abstract, because I actually think the abstract way of answering this is more helpful. So first, on the first side here, is that you need to make sure you're asking the right question. And so the question of how do I get in front of more customers is I think, in my opinion, honestly, begging the question that the problem is that you're not getting in front of customers, right? So if we think about it as a chain, you have, we get in front of customers, there's a message there. Once the message is there, the message resonates. Once the message resonates, we're able to get them into a lead, where then we're able to close the deal. And then once we're able to close the deal, we're able to collect money, right? So there's a big chain of things there. And the assumption that it's getting in front of customers is the first thing that you want to question, because that's not always true. So if you have a message that is, for example, suboptimal, and you just throw that in front of more customers, like that's great, you'll increase your conversion rate probably, right? But it's not optimal, because if you're already getting in front of customers and you can tweak the message to get better conversions, then that's better. So it's not about more customers, it's about getting the right message in front of them. Or if you're getting the right messages in front of them, but then the deals just don't close for whatever reason. This was one of the startups that I talked to, then that signals a completely different problem. There's something in the sales process that maybe you don't understand, and there's bad fit in the product. So there's like strong resonance with the pain. So like customers really have the pain, but once you actually get in front of them, that when you start talking about the solution, you start talking about price or whatever, it just kind of falls flat. So the very first thing is challenge the question of what is it that is the actual problem. To turn that around a little bit, the way that I usually ask the question is, if you were to take all of those as levers, right? The number of of customers is a lever. The message that you put in front of them is a lever, right? So the response rate. Then the number of deals that you end up closing at the end of the day is a lever. The number who pay is a lever, right? If we take all of those as levers, ask yourself, what is the one lever that would have the most impact if you were to pull it successfully, right? So assume that you can't pull all of them all at once, because that's just not very scientific, and probably you don't have the resources or time. So like, what one is going to have the greatest impact to pull, and then kind of focus in on that. So that's the first thing. So then the next thing is that when we're talking about this more broadly, we're talking about basically kind of three things. We're talking about a customer, we're talking about a message, and we're talking about the placement of that message. And any one of those three things can be wrong. So if you're talking about getting in front of customers, those are the three things that we're really looking at. If you actually do want to get in front of customers, you have to first ask, do I have the right pool of customers? Am I looking at the right people? Am I talking to the right people? Is this even the right group for this? And so this could be the case of, I'm just targeting the wrong people. It happens all the time. We all go through that in the startup, and you pivot and you kind of figure things out. It could also be that you're just not focused on the early adopters. So like maybe they're mid-market adopters or later market adopters, but they're not your early adopters, not the first people who are going to sign. And so you're just looking at the wrong audience from that perspective. So that could be there too. That could be very real. So the first thing is like, am I talking to the right people? If you're talking to the right people, it's do you know where those people are? That's the placement part of it. So if are you assuming that they're all in this particular location? So you put a message out there. Are you getting the impressions? If you're getting the impressions, then are you getting the conversions? And so are you going to the place where you have the most people? I've talked about this a lot of times on the office hours here, about the importance of distribution, about the importance of getting in front of the easiest audience to get in front of. And the basic idea there is you want to go to the channel where where the most of your customers are, where the greatest number of customers rather are. You go to the channel with the most number of customers that you can get in front of for the least effort. So if you have a huge following on social media of these customers, then that's probably great. If you don't have a huge audience of those customers on social media, even if the customers are on social media, you can't get in front of a lot of them very easily. It's hard to build an audience. You're gonna have to pay for them or do whatever. But maybe there's an influencer you can access, or maybe you can do one-on-one outreach because you can get their email addresses from an industry publication or just from some snooping or whatever. So what is where can you get in front of a large group of people? And so then you want to test those, like, am I getting the impressions? Then am I getting initial resonance on the problem? And then am I getting resonance on the solution? And that's how you test, like, are the customers that even if they're the right people, am I actually finding them there? So that's part of the triad. So we have the customer and then where, and then the third part is that value proposition, which is where you test the resonance. So even if the customers that have the pain and they're really interested in your solution, they want you to solve it, is the message that you're putting in front of them, is the message for that customer that you're putting in that one place, is that actually resonating with them? And that's the last lever that you can kind of tweak in there. And so that's how you get customers respond, is by tweaking any one of those. And the last thing that I'll say about this is the importance of doing this as a true experiment. You don't want to do this as just a let's see what happens kind of exercise. You don't want to say, well, let's just throw something at the wall like spaghetti and we're going to see if it sticks. You want to instead say, I'm going to tweak this lever. This is what I'm going to try. So we're going to be precise, and I'm going to just target this one lever that I want to pull. And then once I'm pulling that one lever, I'm going to do an experiment that looks like blank. If it's social, I'm going to put out a post. It's going to say this. It's going to run for this period of time, that kind of thing. And then you're going to say, I'm expecting a particular result. And then you watch for that result. And if you don't get that result, then that's a fail. That's okay. Then you ask, what does it mean, right? And you figure out, do we want to try again? Do we want to tweak something? Do we need to tweak something else? Whatever. And you just keep running those small experiments until you hone in on the customer and the placement and the message. So broad strokes, that's it. Everything else beyond that is going to end up on the sales side, which I don't think was the most important part. So we will move on from that. So if you happen to be just joining us, I'm super curious. What's something you've learned from a customer really recently? Let me know down in the comments, something you've learned from your customers. Maybe you're talking to them, or maybe the market at large has taught you something when you put your message out there and kind of learned a little something. So let me know. All right, so let's move on to topic number 3 today, which is an upcoming event that I'm really excited about called the Startup Challenge. Links are down in the YouTube description. And the Startup Challenge is an event that's taking place the weekend of September 23rd. It's going to be absolutely amazing. It's like the flagship event here in Sacramento. So you're going to be in Sacramento on September 23rd, or if you want an excuse to be in Sacramento on September 23rd, you should come to this. There's a few videos linked in the description, so you can check those out along with a link to get tickets. Early bird pricing is there, but here's what it is. And here's why I'm so excited about it. So it's actually two competitions in one, but the basic idea is that we all gather together, all the entrepreneurs and creative people in the area. We're going to gather together in person in a room, and we're going to learn about how to launch a startup or find traction in an existing one, not by talking about it, but by actually doing it. And that's where it's two competitions in one. We have two cohorts. So there's the catalyst cohort, we call it. This is for brand new ideas. So you show up on Friday night. If you have an idea, or if you don't have an idea and you just want to join another team, you come, 60-second pitches, brand new ideas. We form teams around those popular ideas. And then you have from Friday until Sunday night to turn that idea into a real business. You pitch in front of a panel of judges for some awesome prizes, including cash. So that's it. That's traction cohort. Super amazing. Learn how to launch a startup by actually doing it. And the second cohort we have is to find traction in an existing startup, which is eligible startups are those who have not yet raised equity investment. So you can have a product or not, you can have customers or not, but no equity investment. And so basically this one is kind of the same format, but it's you already have your team or not, and you come on Friday night and we pair you with a panel of mentors, and those mentors kind of grill you for a few minutes, shred, if you will, what you're working on, and figure out where the biggest question around the traction hypothesis is. And then you have from Friday to Sunday night to get momentum, to get traction on that one question. And then you pitch your progress in front of that same panel of judges on Sunday night for prizes, again, including cash. And we've got like everything taken care of there. We've got mentors, we've got coaches, we've got subject matter experts, we've got workshops, we've got people to motivate you into doing. We've got food, we've got coffee, we've got snacks, we've got everything. It's going to be amazing. Check it out and get your ticket now. So really excited about that. Kind of the flagship event that we're doing here in the Sacramento area, September 23rd. Check it out. Okay, so next, traction. I would be remiss if I didn't talk about traction. So I'm going to do something over the next 7 or so office hours. So roughly over the next 7 weeks or so, I'm going to release one of my principles for how I think you should be thinking about traction in order to speed up the process of finding it, or failing fast trying, which is also an acceptable outcome. And so I have 7 kind of principles that I use when I think about this. So we're just going to kind of do one a week to help you find traction. Okay, so the first one is always to maintain a model. What I mean by this is that we're always trying to do better today than we did yesterday, and we're going to do better tomorrow than we did today. And in order to do that, we have to understand what today is. And when we're kind of starting out, we maybe run experiments or get on the market and do something, we're trying to figure out, are we on the right track? Which means by definition, we're comparing it to some expectation. We're comparing it to a future reality or whatever it is. Or if your startup is further along and you've got cash coming in and everything, you still have some baseline for what today looks like, and you want tomorrow to look different, tomorrow to look better. And so that's the importance of maintaining a model. And that model, if you're far along, could be a financial model. It could be, this is what the health of our business looks like with certain kinds of inputs. This is how we get our acquisition, and this is how we get activation, and then we get revenue, and maybe you're looking at retention in there as well, whatever. But you have some type of model of this is what our business looks like. That way, when you start to get data, you can bring that back in and say, how is our model performing? And is it even the right model? Are we charging money the wrong way, the right way? Is it the pricing that's wrong, or is it the price that's wrong? Is it, whatever? Are we getting in front of the right people? Or are we getting in? Are they getting in, but they're not finishing onboarding, right? You can get all that stuff. But in order to figure out if that whole system is working, you have to have a baseline model to compare it to. And so you always have to have something that you keep in place to say, this is what we think is right? This is what we think is going to lead us to growth. This is what we think is going to lead us to traction. That way, when you're wrong about it, because you're going to be wrong about it, when you're wrong about it, you can tweak and get data back in, change the model and say, okay, this is what we now think is right. And then you can kind of move on. The alternative is sort of this aimlessness where we tweak this, we tweak that, we hope it has an impact on sales. And it doesn't necessarily at the end of the day. That sucks. But if you're just starting out, if you're much earlier on in the process, it's actually the same thing, but your model's not going to be as specific when it comes to things like numbers, because that's not it. Your model's going to have to do with, okay, we think that this is what our customer looks like. These are the details about them. This is where we think they are. And this is, the pains, that this is their wants, their needs, their fears. And we have an hypothesis about our product that has these benefits, these features, and this experience that it creates. And so we think if we get all those together, then customers are going to convert, and it's going to be amazing, right? So we think we have all of that kind of built into it, and so that is a model, right? And as you start to make exercises, make experiments, as you start interacting with customers, you're going to be testing that model. It's always this baseline of is this right? And that's where you can, like going back to our previous question, you can look at is do we have the right customer? Are we placing our message in the right spot? Is the right message that we're placing in there, and so on and so forth. So you can always look at what is happening right now in comparison to what we think is supposed to happen. And then when what we think is supposed to happen doesn't happen, we can ask, what does this mean? And it could just mean that it's a fluke. It could just mean that we need to persevere. But it could mean that we need to pivot. And if we need to pivot, was it our model that was wrong so that we can tweak the model and we're still right? So like we thought it would be Y% conversion, but it's actually, 0.1% off of that, and that's okay, right? Or is it that our assumptions about what's going to lead to traction are wrong, and then we actually need to make a little pivot and maybe serve a different customer or find them in a different place or change our value proposition, create a different kind of experience, whatever it is. So always maintain a model that you can use as a baseline comparison for everything that you do, for every experiment that you run, for every action that you take in the marketplace. Always go back to that model and say, this is what we're comparing it to, because that's going to tell you whether you're on the right track and whether you need to pivot. And that's a really important thing. The alternative, again, is aimlessness. And aimlessness is literally the #1 killer of startups. So I don't recommend that. So that is basically all I've got for today. So just a reminder, the question that I have for you today, let me know down in the comments what something you've learned from a customer recently is, either one-on-one conversations, or maybe you put something out into the marketplace and it resonated, or it didn't resonate, or it resonated, but, right? What'd you learn? I'm curious what you'd learned from the marketplace lately. And because I'm here every Thursday, I'm going to be back next Thursday. That's the 25th of August. So I'll see you guys then. And remember, you can submit a question in advance by hitting the link that's in the description. And I will answer it right here on the air. But otherwise, that's all I've got for you today. Have a fantastic rest of your week, and I will see you guys next week. Peace.